In an ancient world where gods meddled in the affairs of mortals, one man's journey home became the stuff of legends. This video dives deep into the epic tales of the Iliad and the Odyssey, penned by the enigmatic Homer, whose very existence is shrouded in mystery. We'll explore the wrathful siege of Troy, the cunning that toppled a city, and the decade-long Odyssey fraught with monsters and divine caprice. Why should these ancient stories matter to us now? They are not only the cornerstone of Western literature, but also timeless sagas that still resonate with the trials and triumphs of human experience. About 3,000 years back, there was a man named Homer who's a bit of a mystery. People think he was a blind poet. He wrote two big stories. The first one, the Iliad, is about a 10-year-long war in a city called Troy, which ended because of a smart trick. The second story, the Odyssey, is about a guy named Odysseus trying to get back home to a place called Ithaca after the war. He's known for coming up with the trick to win the war, but he really just wants to get back to his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. The gods decided it should take him 10 tough years to get home, during which he'd fight lots of enemies and become a famous legend. Odysseus, who's the boss of Ithaca, leaves Troy after the war, really missing his family. On the way, they stop for supplies but get attacked and have to run back to their boats. Their trip takes them around the Greek islands, and a storm blows them to a place where the people give them this fruit, the lotus, which makes them forget about going home. Odysseus figures out it's dangerous and gets his crew back to the boat. Then, they come to an island with a one-eyed giant named Polyphemus, who's the son of the sea god Poseidon. He traps them and eats some of the men. Odysseus gets the giant drunk and tells him his name is Nobody. When he makes the giant blind and the giant yells for help, he says, "Nobody's hurting me," so no one comes to help. The Greeks sneak out by hiding under sheep as they leave the cave. Odysseus makes a mistake by telling the giant his real name as they leave, which makes Poseidon mad and curse their trip. They'll get lost a lot and lose all their friends. Next, they meet a king who controls the winds. He gives Odysseus a bag that has all the winds in it to help them sail home. But his crew thinks there's treasure in the bag, opens it, and they all get blown off course. The king, who was nice before, tells them to leave, thinking the gods are mad at them. More bad stuff happens in a place with man-eating giants who wreck all the ships except for Odysseus's. They barely get away and end up at the home of a witch named Circe, who turns half the crew into pigs. But Odysseus gets some magic help and convinces her to change them back. She's so impressed she helps them and even has a son with Odysseus. After a year, she tells him to go to the underworld for advice. In the underworld, Odysseus talks to a wise man who warns him not to mess with the sun god's cows. They leave the underworld, avoid some dangerous singing ladies by having Odysseus tied up, and then they choose to face a six-headed monster instead of a giant whirlpool. They lose 6 men but save the rest. But then, they mess up and eat the sun god's cows. The sun god gets mad, and the king of the gods sinks their ship with a lightning bolt. Only Odysseus survives and ends up on an island with a goddess named Calypso, who falls in love with him and wants him to stay forever. But he's still homesick. A goddess named Athena sees he's sad and asks the king of the gods to let him go. When he finally gets close to home, there's another storm, and he ends up on an island with some friendly people. Nausicaa, a princess of the Phaeacian people, finds a man named Odysseus washed up on the beach. Seeing that he's in a bad spot, she takes him home to her parents, King Alcinous and Queen Arete. They throw a big dinner, and during the party, a singer's story about the Trojan War makes Odysseus cry, which gives away who he is. The Phaeacians, who like to treat their guests well, agree to help him get back to his home. When Odysseus gets back to Ithaca, he finds a bunch of guys trying to marry his wife, Penelope, because they think he's not coming back. With the help of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, he disguises himself as a poor man. He hangs out with his faithful pig farmer Eumaeus, and then his son Telemachus comes back from looking for him. They all make a secret plan to deal with the suitors. Inside his own house, still in disguise, Odysseus watches Penelope tell the suitors that whoever can string Odysseus's big bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axes can marry her. It's a test only Odysseus can pass. When he does it, he tells everyone who he is, and with his son, the pig farmer, and Athena, he beats all the suitors. Now that he's home, Odysseus still has to show Penelope it's really him. She's been waiting for him all this time. When they finally get together, it's the happy ending of Odysseus's long journey. It's a story about not giving up, being smart, and wanting to get back to where you belong. It's a story that has been told for years because it shows how tough and clever people can be. The two big stories, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are super important books from a long time ago, and people think Homer wrote them. Homer is a pretty big deal in history, but no one knows much about him. Some say he couldn't see and that he told his stories out loud from memory. The Iliad is about a big war in Troy and focuses on a warrior named Achilles. The story talks about what happens right before Troy is defeated. It's written in a way that's easy to remember and say out loud, which was important back then because people didn't write stuff down as much. It's made of 24 parts and is written in a special way that became a model for other long poems. Homer was really good at making long comparisons that were detailed and fancy. The Odyssey is a bit different. It's about Odysseus, the king of a place called Ithaca, and his super long trip home after the Trojan War. The story starts in the middle, with Odysseus's wife and son dealing with some guys who want to marry Penelope because they think Odysseus is gone for good. Telemachus, the son, goes looking for his dad and finds out he's still alive. The story then goes into Odysseus's own adventures, like dealing with creatures that make you forget your home, a one-eyed giant, and other mythical problems until he finally gets back to Ithaca, surprises his wife and son, and takes back his throne. Homer uses a lot of symbols and deeper meanings in the Odyssey. Things like Odysseus's bow or the shroud his mom makes have bigger ideas behind them, like power and trickery. The ocean in the story stands for life itself. Homer's stories really set the stage for other writers and have been a big deal in Western books, teaching people how to use different writing tricks and themes. These two stories were a big part of school and culture in ancient Greece and are still super influential in European books and stories. How exactly these stories were made is still up for debate, but it's thought that they come from a mix of Homer just making stuff up and the way people used to tell stories back then. These tales teach us to be brave, smart, and to keep trying no matter what. Odysseus faces lots of trouble, like a giant with one eye and sing-songs that trap sailors. But he keeps thinking of his family and finally gets home. There, he has to be sneaky to beat the bad guys waiting for him. These old stories are still famous because they show us how to be tough and clever, just like Odysseus. If you liked hearing about his wild adventures, hit that like button and subscribe for more cool stories from the past.